remember hearing my father tell the story many times of how his father, Grandpa Charlie Ford, had changed his name from Cornelius Neal Williams to Charlie Ford. I came to learn much later on that this Caucasian slave owner, whose name was Jonathan Williams, had owned Grandpa Charlie Ford's slave mother and was indeed his father. In my adult years, when I saw this photo of Jonathan Williams for the first time, I recall carefully looking at these two photos and seeing the strong resemblance between the slave master and Charlie Ford. Grandpa Charlie Ford was born a slave. He was named at birth Cornelius Neal Williams. It was common practice for children born into slavery to take the surname of their owner. In Neal's case, his owner was his father. Neal was 4 years old when President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation that legally ended slavery. However, his mother and 7 children, including young Neal, remained on Mr. Williams' plantation. Strangely enough, it was not uncommon for freed slaves to stay with their previous owners after they were freed. In spite of the oppressive conditions under which young Neal grew up in, he acquired a high school education when schooling was virtually non-existent for most black people. This suggests that young Neal had a favorable relationship with his well-to-do father, who apparently arranged for his schooling. As a young man, Neal left South Carolina and went up north to New York to pursue a better life. Not much is known about his life that he spent in New York, only to recall that, in his own words, that he ran afoul with the law, and to escape, he hitchhiked a southbound train and eventually ended up in Suwannee County, Florida in the early 1890s. Once there, he changed his name from Cornelius Neal Williams to Charlie Ford. Thus, the Ford legend begins. In 1895, he met and married a 19-year-old Mary Hill, and after a whirlwind romance, the union would last 67 years until his death in 1962 at the age of 101. They fathered 13 children and raised them on a 200-acre farm that he purchased in the late 1890s, located in what is now known as the Claywood community. I remember very vividly as a young girl when my daddy, Sidney Ford, and 3 of his brothers, Uncle Harvey, Uncle Tim, and Uncle Ernest, traveled by Greyhound bus to Society Hill, South Carolina. And they went back, and it was confirmed they met for the first time many relatives. It was confirmed that, yes, he was born as Cornelius Williams. My fondest memory of Grandpa Ford driving up to the house was seeing him always sitting on the front porch reading the newspaper. Even though he owned this big farm, I never really saw him work in the field. I'm sure he did, but he was always reading. The other memory that I have of him is when he would talk. He was kind of a short man, and he would talk, and he would always say, so and so, I God, so and so and so. God. That was his favorite. Those were his favorite words. Nancy Hill. Nanny Nancy Hill. And I'm not going to tell you too much about her, only to let you know that she was born in Columbia County around Lake City, Florida. Her husband, Charlie Hill, was born in Alabama in 1856. Together they married and settled in the Padlock community as sharecroppers. And to their union, they had, I believe, 8 children. Nancy Hill was known throughout the community as Mother Hill. And she and 2 other devout Baptist women were the founders of Queen Chapel Primitive Baptist Church. And it was said that the old boss man gave them an old house, and that was thus the beginning of Queen Chapel's church. Grandma Mary Hill Ford, who was one of the children of Nancy Hill. And I remember her very well. She was the oldest of 5 children born to Charlie and Nancy Hill. She was born around 1890 near Lake City, Florida. And she met and married Charlie Ford. Again, I say that they had 13 children. At a very young age, she became a Christian and remained devoted to Christ throughout her life. And she was no doubt influenced by her very godly mother, Nancy Hill. Grandma Mary loved Queen Chapel, and if you were in her house, you knew for sure that was where you were going to be on Sunday morning. That's where she took all of her children and her great-grandchildren. She didn't live very far from the church, and she would walk down that little dirt road, the same little dirt road that we will go down on Sunday morning. It was a testament to her devout life and believe in Christ, because 8 out of the 8 of her sons, 5 of them became ministers of the gospel. Grandpa Ford, through her persistent prayers, was converted and baptized very late in life. At 60 years old, he became a Christian and was baptized. Grandma Mary Ford loved her family. She was the uniting force, Grandma Ford was the uniting force within the Ford family. After all of her children, many of them moved up north for a better life, but she would always summon all of her children and all of her grandchildren home for Christmas. And that was like going to heaven, when you would go to Grandma's house during the Christmas holidays, where you would find all of the cousins and uncle and aunts. Her Christmas dinners were always very festive, with lots of turkeys and hams and chitterlings and potato pies and whatever else you could think of, all cooked by Grandma on the old wooden stove. So the gathering of Grandma's house for Christmas dinner were in fact sort of the forerunner of our present day family reunions. In fact, part of the goal for the family reunions is to replicate the effect of those Christmas gatherings many years ago at Grandma's house. But most importantly, our family reunions are a catalyst for passing on our Christian heritage, passed on through us, this saintly, God-fearing lady. And in closing, what I remember most about Grandma Ford is she always wore something on her head, a scarf. At church, she always had on all white from head to toe. I was talking to Grace. I never saw her uptown. Grace said that she did go to town, but I never saw her uptown. And when you were at her house, she washed, seemed like every day. She had a big old black boil pot. And her favorite saying was, come on over here and rake some chips around Grandma's pot. She baked the best tea cakes in the county. She took in a lot of ironing for white people. One of the things I can remember, even though when you were at a house, there were always lots of going on, a lot of cousins there, you always felt loved. And I remember my mother saying that she loved children very much. One of the things that you never ever did was sit on Grandma's bed. Thank you so very much.